And they're off. Start out with a 2.5-minute cutscene here, and then half a minute of essentially auto scroller, at which point the actual run will start. But otherwise, this is a relatively slow-paced game than a lot of stuff you may see here on SpeedGaming or a lot of different speedruns you may see. This game is an art as video game, so it's very much more about the aesthetic than the actual gameplay, but the speedrun of it I think is really fun and enjoyable, even though it's a relatively chill speedrun, not as intense, not as super fast paced. But because of how the mechanics work and because of the leniencies they give you, we're able to push those to the limits, exploit those as hard as possible. And there are several very, very difficult tricks that high-level speedrunners have to hit to do well in these speedruns. So it's still challenging, it's still interesting, and I hope y'all enjoy. And GRIS is up. Now, as way of background on this game is, as I mentioned, a art as game game. It is telling essentially the story of a girl who lost her mother. She There's no text in the game. Everything's done through color and through aesthetic and through music. But it tells the story of the emotions of grief that she goes through after losing her mother. These being denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, expressed by various colors in the game. The first of which being this first section, which is white for denial. You'll also notice the runners are jumping. They are bunny hopping along because it is faster to GRIS moves faster in the air than she does on the ground. She moves at about a 3.3 in the air and a 3.2 on the ground, which is a small difference, but it's essentially free to do, and it adds up very significantly over the course of the run, saving approximately 5 minutes over simply walking, which is massive in a game like this, where despite being an hour and 20-minute long speed run, every single second counts, as it's the precise movement and the precise tricks that really make the difference in these runs. The runners are now collecting stars, which is going to be the primary mechanic used throughout this game to build paths to traverse various areas of the map, and at the end of each section being deposited into the hub area to form a constellation up above it where GRIS ultimately wants to go. I refer to the protagonist as GRIS, G-R-I-S, for the name of the game, GRIS being gray in Spanish. This game is produced by Namada Studios, a studio out of Spain. And gray being kind of the default color, so to speak, that the protagonist starts out as. We kind of adopted that as her name. But as I said, there's no text in this game. None of the characters have actual names. There's no dialogue. It's very much just an artistic expression, and that's that. And you will see several times throughout this games, we've kind of just created our own names for various of these characters along the way. Now Grease entering into her mother's hand for the first time and triggering the transition to the second emotion, anger. It looks like Tass is ahead by, looks like about 4 seconds. Again, denial not being a pretty consistent split, not an exceptional lot of changes between them. One thing you may have noticed at the beginning that there was some slight difference in the time for the cutscenes. There is some RNG involved in that initial cutscene of about 0.1 to 0.2 seconds. A lot of this lag can be removed by preloading and running through the cutscene once. For some reason, it always goes slowest the first time you load it. But even beyond that, there's still some inherent RNG with it. And as I mentioned, the players are now depositing their stars into the hub area to start forming that constellation up top and proceeding into anger. You'll see Tass on the left is timing his hops more precisely than it may seem. Just about every jump in this game can be mapped out to full optimal movement, and the racers will do everything they can to make each and every jump as optimal as possible. You see he lines those up to avoid bumping edges, to avoid missing certain jumps, to try to get a zip in that last area, and also to try to clear the jump over that last set of stairs to enter into this cutscene. I'll discuss zips later on, a mechanic that I think will probably show up a few more times. Great tower climb from Tass. Got a great last jump there into the cutscene. And as I don't think I mentioned it earlier, the runners will always be trying to jump into cutscenes where relevant, because when Grease enters a cutscene, she has to walk to the final point where that cutscene occurs. In this case of the tower, climbing up the last bit of it. In the case of the hand, at the end of Denial, walking into the center of the hand. And Grease walks very slow. So we try to jump into it as late as possible before triggering the cutscene, so that we can get as much of that airtime before landing and then triggering that cutscene. That can save as much as 2 seconds in that first cutscene at the end of the denial, and half a second to a second at various other cutscenes throughout the run. Now entering the first section of Anger, which features sandstorms, the first mechanic of this area. We'll see if Task goes for practice here. He does not. Coming up will be Sandstorm Skip, the first major skip in the game. The players here entering into this area have the opportunity to walk out of it and practice it, but it looks like neither went for it. Just putting all their dice on the main thing. This section is dominated by these cycles of sandstorms, and we've managed to find a trick to skip one of those cycles. It takes advantage of the fact that while for the most part we're trying to go to the right and push through these sandstorms, and we can't really do so. There's one section of the game where we do actually want to move back left, and so we take advantage of that sandstorm. We jump into it, we have it throw us to the left, and then we have to do various shimmies to try to jump back into the air, continue getting pushed to the left. And we try to do at least 3 of these jumps to try to get the full skip. And at the end of the sandstorm is where the movement begins. Tass is a good start. Good momentum jump off of the end of that slide. Nat with a good jump as well. Tass is in position to try to make the skip. Natalier is as well. Tass entering to grab the star. This star can be deceptively annoying because you need to grab it and move back to the left as quickly as possible, but sometimes you miss it, and that's always frustrating. Tass gets 1 jump, 2. Tass does get 3 jumps. It looks like he'll be able to get the full skip. Natalier, it looks like she got 1 or 2 jumps, but it looks like she's going to be a little short and not quite able to make the skip, unfortunately. So let's see if Tass can get this precise movement up these areas to officially make the skip. I guess not officially yet. He does. So Tass makes it up to that top platform before triggering that next sandstorm, and he gets the full skip, saving about 15 to 16 seconds. Very well done. The last part of that trick, though, requires out of this next rock that will travel to the right, short little auto scroller, he will have to jump out of it in time to land on the platform to the right and officially trigger the next section of this game and skipping the sandstorm. Since he got the full skip, he has a bit of leniency. He can be conservative about it, trying to make the skip, but as early as he jumps is real-time save because he's effectively past the cycle at this point. Tass gets that memento for good luck, something I always like to see. And there, he takes a somewhat conservative jump. That platform extends another foot or so out to the left that you can actually land on an invisible area if you make a really aggressive early jump. But he was fairly conservative and got that full skip. So the runner is likely separated by about 19 seconds at this point. And just for reference on the skip, as you may have seen, as Tass exited that rock moving to the right, he jumped over and did not get a sandstorm up on the top of that platform, whereas Natalier did because she did not make it in time to get that skip. Tass now getting the first power-up of the game, the Heavy. GRIS can now get thick and push through these sandstorms and break rocks, and it's utilized for various mechanics throughout the game. And as we enter this temple-like area as the orchestra swells, it's always a very pretty part of the game. Tass with some very clean heavies. Tass often has a problem with going a little too fast on these, but we'll see if he hits them all. Those are very clean as well. Oh, he went too fast. Missed one. As I mentioned, this is a deceptively difficult section where you have to jump in heavy repeatedly to break through these rocks. But if you go too fast, you won't have finished the heavy animation. You won't be able to jump and get that next heavy. So it's the great speedrunner's dilemma: to time it out well, but not go too fast. Nataliers were very clean heavies. Task now in the second half of red. Goal here is hit the cycles. You got cycles on cycles on cycles in this section. So sometimes half a second can lose you 6 seconds. Sometimes you can lose a second and a half and not actually lose any time at all. He does manage to get the first cycle here on this windmill, making very clean movements up the tower. Natalier hitting that cycle as well. Very nice movement. You also notice her jumping on those spokes there. It moves slower when GRIS is standing as opposed to in the air. So you want to keep jumping, keep moving as quickly as possible. Task getting bad Lenny RNG. That little rock guy down there we call Lenny. He is RNG whether he's standing over kind of to the left or to the right. Ideally, we want him to the right to jump up over him as quickly as possible. It can lose up to a second if he's in the bad position, and he was over to the left for Tass. Talia getting slightly better Lenny. Now you notice the runner heavying to trigger this clockwork mechanism in the center. It's on a 6-second cycle, and you notice both were able to trigger that plate, jump to the right, jump up, and jump across precisely and quickly to try to hit that very first cycle. It's surprisingly difficult to do. The further right you heavy on that platform, the more time you have, but the more time effectively you use because you're triggering that clock later. This movement on the left that Natalier is finishing up on these platforms is one of those sections of movements where you can't really lose time as long as you have decent movement, because you're going to be bound by this cycle in the middle that you'll have to wait for regardless. Both runners cleanly make it through those cycles. Proceed to the next section. Good momentum jump from Tass. Very clean cutbacks. Very clean climb from Nat as well. Good momentum jump. Now Tass is coming up to George. Let's see how his George. His George looks just fine. Ooh. Nat with a slight miss there. Not quite getting the jump off, too heavy on that platform. George might be a little scuffed for Natalier. We'll see as she comes up here. She might have to be a little bit aggressive to try to hit him in time. You notice George, the second of our little rock friends out here, walks back and forth. He's on a cycle that is initiated at the very beginning of this section after you are blown up by those birds after the heavies down the shaft. Looks like she's going to be okay. Only having to pause for a little bit at the top there. Did manage to get him coming back. You can, unfortunately, if you lose just a little bit of time, end up in a bad cycle where you are waiting. Unfortunately, have to wait for George to walk back because you cannot jump all the way onto him when he's all the way to the right. Task now in the balloon section. You noticed earlier Task having to walk through that platform which went up to the left in one direction and then flat, and he continued flat. To do so, you have to actually hold down on the D-pad or analog stick that you're using to do so, but you also want to be careful of jumps to try not to jump up onto that next platform. It did look like he cut his jumps a little close on there, almost missing that, falling through, but managed to make it through okay. Task very cleanly making it through the cycle back at the middle. Very clean movement on the left in the balloon there. Natalie looks like slightly behind. I think she ended up having to take one extra cycle in the middle, but not too bad. Ooh, Tass failing the insta, the top of the Ferris wheel there. Insta heavy being a mechanic where you enter your heavy animation at the very edge of a ledge where the animation is clipping through some piece of rock or some piece of platform or something in the game, where if that's happening, GRIS will instantly trigger her heavy animation and instantly jump into the heavy. It is a frame perfect trick. If you're a frame early, a couple frames early, that's okay. As soon as she gets to that edge, she will do that insta heavy. Nat, you see they're getting a very nice insta heavy, Natalia. But if you are a frame late, you will be in the air and do the entire heavy animation, losing the entire half a second. Which is what you saw from Tass. He was just half a second late and had to go through the entire heavy animation out in the air. And our second hand entry as we transition into green. A 23:47 split from Tass, very clean. Anything under 23:50 is a very good time to get up to this point. Another thing you may notice as Tass falls here, he didn't heavy down that section, where you otherwise can heavy to go slightly faster downward. But it is actually faster to float and hold left and get that extra movement to the left rather than the time saved from the heavy. Part of that is as you fall through these clouds here that you see Natalia falling through now. Rather not those, but these next set of clouds that you'll see her falling through. In the map, you are actually teleported back towards where the hub area is, even though the game gives an illusion of a continuous map. The layout doesn't quite work. They don't want you to spend 10 minutes walking back a long distance from which you came. So they do a little bit of teleporting when it's convenient. You'll also notice Tass broke a pot that he came across over there, and Natalia did not. Contentious issue in the community. I like breaking the pot first there. It's more convenient. It's easier to me, but it's not something that you ultimately use until about 45 minutes later in the run, returning to hub after depression. We don't believe it makes any real-time difference between whether you break it here in green or at the end in yellow, but To each their own. Yeah, I do believe, like I said, I think most runners break it early in green, but there are a handful who break it later, like Natalier. I think one of our runners that does break it later is Aggie, but they're Australian, so that's only to be expected. Entering into green, lush trees, pleasant music, nice peaceful lull in the game after anger. There aren't too many tight tricks or cycles in this section. The only significant one being what you just saw Tass go through, which is the first tree cycle. This split tends to have very consistent movement because of the way all of the cycles kind of line up, and it's kind of just jumping to the left for 7 minutes. Natalier hitting tree cycle as well. Good jump into the cutscene. Bunch of fun folding trees in this section. As I said, these cycles are relatively straightforward. There's not a whole lot we can do to be super aggressive to try to make a tighter cycle, as we do in many sections of this game, such as the sections in red. Task now introducing us to our first friend of the game, who we've deemed Macaroni. I believe Tass named him Macaroni due to the feathers in his cap, referring to the Yankee Doodle tune. As much as I love Macaroni, and I think everybody should love Macaroni because he's adorable and he's my best friend. Some people don't like him because he's a source of RNG in this game. He's essentially hard-coded to wait for some random amount of time, anywhere from a quarter to 3/4 of a second, each time he eats one of these apples or does really any action. And we need him to eat these apples here because then he opens the doorway for us. Expression of bargaining. So essentially there's a solid 3 seconds in this split that is effectively just determined by macaroni RNG, which unfortunately, as I said, for a split that's relatively straightforward and doesn't have any other real tricks, is really frustrating for a lot of the top players. But sometimes macaroni just wants to wait. Sometimes he needs to just not rush in life. But we're speedrunners, so screw that. We do need to rush. Both players with very clean movement so far in the split. As I said, nothing super significant as far as tricks, but it is absolutely possible and, you know, frequent still to make mistakes. But both runners doing great job so far, both on very clean runs. The major factor still only being that sandstorm skip between the two. Good jump off that slide from Tass. That momentum jump is pretty important. If you don't get it, you fall pretty far back over on the right side of that little hill there. I think you lose as much as 2 seconds if you don't get that jump off the edge to preserve that slide momentum. Ooh, a little bit of an issue from Macaroni there for Natalier. I'm not sure why. It looked like she waited okay and got that heavy in time. It's just unfortunate scuff. Task now in the underground, trying to do some very clean, precise movements. These jumps are deceptively difficult. The hitboxes for these little platforms being not obvious, as they don't necessarily line up with all the art in this game. And Task now saying goodbye to Macaroni as he gives us that star. All of the villagers, as they're called in the code in this underground section, just hanging out and admiring you. Always found them pretty cute and fun in this game. Very reminiscent of the characters from Spirited Away. In fact, in the code, Macaroni is actually given the name Kodama, I believe referring to Spirit from Spirited Away. But as I mentioned, since this game has no text, no dialogue, and the characters didn't initially have names, we came up with names for a lot of these characters. But then later on, we looked at the code, and a lot of them have names, such as Kodama, such as those villagers in there, such as some of the other characters in the game. Some of them having less creative names, like Rock Crab. But the community's kind of fallen in love with the names we've given them, and so we like to stick with them. Yeah, that's true. Actually, I think the tree spirits in Princess Mononoke, that's a much better comparison. That may be what I was thinking of as well. Nomada confirmed weeb. Both racers getting through those red trees, cycling as you jump very cleanly. Moving on to the second power up in the game, as the glide. Players now have a double jump. You also see the racers jumping through these little voids of red birds, using them to jump upwards, continue along, get to the next section of this game. You'll also see them using jump cancels, as the voids want to throw you upwards, but we tend to want to move right and left as those birds throw us up. We want to stop that momentum and transition it into momentum left and right. Task now trying to hit double fast trees. He had pretty clean movement from bird cycles at the beginning, pretty clean first fast trees. He's going for double fast trees, making that jump into the middle. Clean, jump to the second tree. Very nicely done. That's one of the pretty difficult cycles to hit. You have to, those spinning birds in that earlier large room, you have to hit them just right so that you can have them throw you over to the left to get far enough ahead to hit that tree cycle in time. Natalier now moving over to the birds. Slight hiccup having to move just over to the left to hit those birds, not quite getting the momentum to the left she needed. It looks like she is going to hit first cycle on the first trees, but I do not believe she's going to hit double fast trees. Ooh, very unfortunate from Natalier jumping out, expecting that tree to appear by the time she got there. Didn't quite. She fell and had to go back around. That's unfortunate time loss. But good to see her being aggressive. Using our heavy here in the first boss fight. Now I have to face big mean bully bird. Even though this game, you cannot die in this game, you can't take damage in this game. Bird is nonetheless very bully. Natalier now entering the bird fight. Task remembering to break that pot, I believe in an earlier race. May or may not have been this tournament, I may be misremembering, but sometimes players forget to break that pot and just keep moving to the left because that's how they do it. Ooh, Task going for bird blow here. The second major skip in this game. He misses it on the first try and misses it badly, unfortunately losing a lot of time. Now missing it a second time. This is a trick where we attempt to trick the bird into giving his heavy blow to us multiple times, hitting it there. You see, as soon as he lands on that tree in the middle, the bird gives its big blow immediately once again. Saves about 3 seconds if you hit it, but loses as much as 15 seconds if you miss it badly, as Task did that first time, clipping through the edge of that tree. Looks like he lost, and missing it a second time, but not as bad. Looks like he lost 20, maybe even 25 seconds there. But good to see him going for the tricks. Natalier coming up to bird blow here. I'm not sure if she'll be going for it. As I said, it's a 15-second risk to save 3 seconds, so probably something a lot of runners don't go for, especially those that aren't especially confident in it, and as she doesn't here. Goes to the casual strategy, where you have to sit and wait in the middle here. Bird to blow you again. Slight hiccup from Tass, it looked like. Slightly awkward cutback. Looks like Tass is going for his original bird fight strat. There's a new bird fight strat recently discovered by Skylar that I believe saves a second or two. It was discovered right before his race, I believe, last week. Though Tass, I think, hasn't been able to learn that one yet. But hits the standard bird fight strat very clean. Yeah, I don't even know that bird fight strat. Ooh, I believe Nat is going for Skylar's bird fight strat. Unfortunately, does get blown back to the middle. Gets rolled up. Tass with the next hand entry, entering into blue for depression. Natalier coming up to it as well. Sliding down for the trek back to the hub. This is a short split, about 3.5 minutes, with two significant tricks in it. One being fast glide, which looks like Tass was a little early on. You ideally want to glide just above the water there, avoid getting the deep sink into the water, getting the glide light sink into the water, but also having that momentum to the right and not doing it too early as to bump into that wall. It looks like he did bump into that wall, so you will not get that half a second from a success with that trick. Tass does hit Memento Route. It's the other major save in this section, in this split. Saves about half a second to go up on that top route. You avoid climbing up an awkward wall and you get a little extra boost from those birds. Again, there's so many of these just very kind of precise and convoluted tricks that we go to save the smallest amounts of, but in a game like this, we absolutely go for them. Looks like the runners are about 30 seconds apart after that last split. You'll see Tass doing everything to avoid spending as much time in the water as possible. We glide to avoid sinking into the water too far and doing a very slow climb upwards. All of this water movement is extremely slow. As I mentioned, walking on the ground or jumping in the air at a 3.2 or 3.3, I believe moving in the water is about a 1 or a 1.5. So we avoid it at all costs until later on when we get a power up that enables us to move very fast through the water. Tass entering the hub now. The end of green to deposit his stars. Another major source of RNG in this is star RNG, as the stars move up into the heavens to enter that constellation, and in other instances where the stars are moving around. They move somewhat randomly. They move in voids, which are these random uh, motions of objects interacting with each other to essentially look like they're moving kind of chaotically and randomly, but it can actually create up to half a second of time discrepancy if the stars spend too much time moving around before getting into position and triggering the split into the next part of the section. Yeah, we have a community sum of best where we compare all our splits from the individual splits in this game from RTA runs, and I have actually the community sum of best split for that last section because I got absolutely godly star RNG and nobody's going to beat me, which I'm fine with. I'll take an RNG win. Tass here getting the first major trick of this underground depression section. This first section where you need to try to make it as precise movement as possible to try to hit a cycle coming up. It's an 8-second cycle, and you have about 7 seconds of leeway to hit the fast version of the cycle. Hitting the first trick there, heavy dive skip, where you heavy to break that block, but not to fall through to the next section. So you avoid falling into the water and losing as much as 5 seconds. A nice insta from Tass earlier on that pulley as well. You can actually hit what we call fastest cycle, which is having incredibly precise movement throughout this entire section and hitting even faster 8 seconds, even faster version cycle of that 8-second cycle. It's extremely hard to do RTA. I believe Tass is the only one to ever have done it RTA, and he did it. I believe he's only done it once. It's been done in ILs, but even in ILs, it's very difficult. I believe he's on track to do it so far here, though. He had very clean heavy dive skip. He had a good insta onto the pulley. He was a little early on the insta in that last section. That's one you need to be conservative of, though. If you miss it and walk off to the edge, don't get the insta, you actually don't fall through that water section. You have to swim all the way back around, losing a lot of time. Entering mushrooms. Very clean mushrooms. Clean pulleys. Natalier also getting a slightly early but still partial insta. Ooh, a slip up from Tass there, falling into the water at the end of that section. That almost certainly kills fastest cycle, as he may have had a chance of getting, but he's still been very clean and should easily get fast cycle. Clean heavies. And now is where these cycles pay off. These frozen ice cycles. You notice the flickering lights there showing Tass that he just missed fastest cycle. If he hadn't had that little slip into the water, I think he might have hit it. But he does easily get fast cycle. Looks like been some clean clean movement from Natalier so far in this section. I didn't actually see if she hit heavy dive skip, but I'm assuming she did. I believe she's on track for fast cycle still. Task now doing the trickiest part of this section. Trying to be very quick exiting that heavy, super quick to get over in transition. Create that next block to cycle that section. Does it very cleanly. There is another strategy recently developed for that section. Ooh, slight hiccup on the heavy for Nat. There's a newer strategy in that ice cavern section on the right that Skylar came up with recently, which takes advantage of the hitbox of that little clock thing on the top, where you can actually heavy up at the top of that tower, position just right, and jump into that section that holds the star without even opening it up, essentially clipping into the side of it. It's an extremely precise trick. You have less than a second of time to set it up before missing the cycle, but it saves about 5 seconds. So if you can be consistent at it, it's worth it, as I believe Skylar does go for it, and I believe he did hit it in his world record run. Task now receiving the next power up in the game, the dive. Clean top right. As I mentioned before, water was super slow. Now water is super fast, and we want to spend as much time in the water as possible. Swimming in is very fast, diving in is very fast. Natalier hitting 2 cycle, a slight slip up, but she didn't miss a cycle for it. Task moving through these various underwater sections rather. This section of the game is also the section that you would skip in the no restrictions category of the game. As the title shows, this is any percent no out of bounds. This is the category that, the main category that most people run in the game. Very few run no restrictions these days. The difference being a clip in that ice caverns where you position GRIS just right, and then heavy into her frozen body and you can clip out of bounds. You move around the background of this area and effectively skip this section of the game. Saves about 2.5 minutes, but this is a really fun section. I like playing it. Doing the clip is a precise, finicky trick about 45 minutes into this game, and also requires a down patch to version 1.0 of this game, all of which kind of combine to make it an annoying category to run, and one nobody really runs anymore. Natalier with a pretty clean water tower. Task coming up to water tower now. You notice Natalier does start in the top left. Ooh, a little slip up from Task, a little bobble. Being very conservative in that water tower, but making it through okay. No major slip ups. As I said, these sections, Natalier does start in the top left and goes counterclockwise, whereas Task and I believe most other runners, if not all, start in the top right. I don't think it makes any difference. I don't think I'll lose any time to go one way or the other. That's just the way they go. You do have to collect all the stars eventually. Yes, there are also some differences in 1.0 that make it a little more annoying to run. The optimal bird fight strats don't work in 1.0. Additionally, the heavy at the top of the windmill at the end of red is no longer lenient on the insta heavy. If you go for the insta heavy and you're a frame late, you will not trigger the plate at the bottom. You'll have to climb all the way back up again. So those are just little things that all the more so make it more frustrating to run on 1.0. Ooh, tasked with a sloppy butt entry, but makes it in there okay eventually. Sloppy Butt Entry was the name of my high school punk band. Talia just getting that star. No swim of shame for her. Doesn't quite get the turtle cutscene skip. It's something you saw task it earlier, where you trigger the cutscene for turtle, and then just in time as the trigger has been started, but before you lose your ability to move, you dive downward so that the turtle does not have to go and wait for you. Saves about 3 seconds. Task now entering the second boss fight, the eel. He was a bird. It was bully bird, but now it's bully eel. Bully eel likes to bite. So you can actually time your dives here to get out of these bites from the eel. He does a telegraphing little fake out before he does your bites, at which point you can dive, as you see here. Fake out, dive, miss the bite. The bite doesn't do much. Like I said, you can't actually take damage in this game. It just kind of rolls you up a little bit, and the animation is slightly slow. Does save time to avoid getting bitten. Natalier now entering the hand and triggering the boss fight. Task now entering tunnels. These are the dark tunnels between the first and second half of the eel fight, which you have to navigate effectively blind. Eventually, the various objects around you lighting up the way, but to do this optimally, you do just have to memorize where to go. Remember when to go up, when to go down. I believe Tass has run this game so many times. He has just about every dive in here down to a science. He knows pretty much where he wants to be for every dive and every bit of movement. So he has it pretty well figured out. But even if you don't know it, even if you don't memorize it, it's still kind of, you can bonk your way along and only lose 4 or 5 seconds for more casual runner. It's not too bad. Orchestra building as Tass avoids these last few bites. Shout out to Berlinist, who composed all of the music in GRIS. And Turtle is back. Turtle friend is here to save us from the eel. Just like anyone going through depressions or grief or issue, it's there are always people to help you through it. You're never alone. Don't try to go through it alone. There's people who can help, friends, family, professionals, and they'll help you through. They'll defeat that bully eel. Task now on the trek back to the hub before the final section of the game, acceptance. The game showing you some of the mechanics that will be, including these lights that light the way, and also the yellows and light blue and crystalline art style. Crystalline's a word, right? I think so. Task now here will probably be going for YOLO jump, a trick he enjoys. He does hit it. It's where you jump out of the water there and you avoid landing on that screen in the middle. Immediately just going for a double jump over to the left. Call it YOLO jump because it's a stupid strat that saves only half a second and loses 15 if you miss it and fall down and have to go around. But Des has gotten pretty consistent about it, and I believe he goes for it every time. Very clean water squares from Tass. Natalier saying goodbye to Turtle. I believe Tass may have golded that that last section there. That last split. It was a very clean trek back to the hub. I believe it if that's the case. Tass picking up a bull bug to light his way as he climbs these stairs. Natalier approaching YOLO jump. Does not go for it. Slightly iffy water exit from Tass, but makes it okay. Tass now in the section that is often makes one of the biggest difference in these races. This next split here scene is lots of movement, back and forth, upside down, using all of the various mechanics in the game, and there's no cycles to fall upon, so it's easy to lose 10, 15 plus seconds just from build up of small movement mistakes. So often makes a big difference in these races. Natalier depositing her stars. Nice. Oop, slight hiccup, but pretty clean water squares from Tass. Just again, trying to go a little too fast. Doesn't quite get above that platform, but doesn't lose too much time because of it. more bull bug climbing. Again, another, as I mentioned, various of these characters throughout this game have been given names by the community. And then ultimately, when we found many of the names in the code, we kind of said, we like our names better. One example being what I've been calling stars throughout this run is the name we initially gave them because you deposit them into the stars as if stars in a constellation. But in the code, those are actually referred to as fireflies. And these little guys you pick up here that look like fireflies are referred to as bulb bugs. I still like calling them stars, and I think bulb bugs is kind of a fun name for these guys, but um, you know, ultimately I think the community did a better job naming. Task now entering one of the more convoluted and precise movement sections in this split. Upside down and then right side up and then upside down again. And now right side up again. Very clean so far. Good jump, good birds. Very clean. And clean water squares from Natalier as well. It's also nice again just to admire this section of the game. As all the rest of this game, but this part especially, it's very beautiful. You noticed at the beginning of the section to this little hub where we're going to collect some stars to get our final power up of the game. You notice Tass went to the right first and then left. Natalier is going to the left first. Some people go to the right, some people go to the left. I think going to the right is better. We don't think it's faster to go one way or the other. I don't think it makes a difference, but you know, people are contentious about it and strong in their opinions. I think everyone should go right. I think it's just the better way to do it. But if you want to go left, very well. I know Aggie, our Australian, goes left, but that's perfectly fair. Only for them, though. For no one else. Ooh. Unfortunate mistake from Natalier there. Just missing that glide and falling back around, having to loop again. Tass now getting the final power up of the game, the same. GRIS now has her voice back. She uses to liven up the world around her, including light up our spider friend. Task going for some dancing, not going for the swag. Swimming in the water. Task with the muted swag. Task now approaching Bug Room. Bug Room contains the most precise, most annoying, and most significant trick in the game, No Cycle. I believe Task will be going for it. Takes about 22 seconds to hit, but it requires 2 successive frame perfect inputs. Requires a frame perfect jump off the edge of this beetle, and then a frame perfect jump after you flip back over the other side. Oh, I think he's gonna make it. And Task hits No Cycle. PogChamp, dude. As easy as Task made that look, that's an incredibly difficult trick, even for him who has probably more experience speedrunning this game than nearly anybody except maybe Skylar. Even he only hits that less than 25% of the time. It's an extremely precise trick, extremely difficult, pixel perfect tricks, but he nails them. Congrats. Unfortunately, because of his bird blow mistakes and a couple other mistakes along the run, I don't think he is on PB or world record pace. But he's definitely on pace for a very good run overall. Natalier getting her scene. Task doing a relatively recent route change on this game by lighting up those birds to fly over the top. Loses a little bit of time now, but it saves having to activate those birds later, and likely saves about a second overall on the run to go that way as opposed to the normal way across the bottom and up the stairs. Task misses those birds there. Bird hitboxes being notoriously annoying and not intuitive where they are. Does get the free insta though. Clean movement from Task. Clean movement from Natalier. Natalier now coming up to Bug Room. Attempting one cycle, and then I don't know if she will attempt no cycle. Ooh, unfortunately, fortunate mistake from Task, not quite triggering that flower there. And also jump canceling too early and missing the flower skip on the first try, but gets on the second try. And Task just, wow. Task is just making a mess of Flower Room right now. This is what happens when you try to go too fast, kids. Speedrunning's dangerous. Stay in school. Don't be like Task. Natalier, I believe, did make first cycle, which is still deceptively difficult. Needing to exit that scene early to jump onto the bug, get it before it moves back up into its cycle, but does not go for no cycle. Task making us climb up into the final section of the game. Climbing into the heavens to activate the stars and flip the world back around before entering the final split of the game. Entering into the end split, which is dominated by a few cutscenes. It's a 7.5-minute split with about 2.5 minutes of actual gameplay. But a very impressive, a very visually intense section of this game, and one I hope you enjoy to watch at the very least. Slight movement hiccups from Natalier, but getting through left side all right. And once again, bully bird, bully eel. It's all actually just you. Some tell me that's symbolism, whatever that means. Clean flower room from Natalier. Not making any of those silly mistakes like tasks. Task now wading through the inky black waters of darkness. Darkness just before the dawn. Apparently darkness is an auto-scroller. Task taking a second to sing to mom one last time. Failing to sing once and having to do it again, but no harm, no foul. Tas making the climb up to the hand for the final time. Makes it very cleanly, triggering the final major cutscene of the game. I'm going to be quiet for this cutscene, let it play, let you enjoy it. I'll be back with you in just a minute. Never get tired of that cutscene. Seen it easily, probably almost 100 times, maybe even at this point, but so beautiful. Tas looks like he's on pace for about a 125.10, I would say, making his final climb up this constellation. Natalier coming up to the final climb of the game. Decides to sing to Mom as well. Much appreciated. $125.13. A very nice run. Natalier making the climb up into the triggering the final cutscene as well. Good race, lots of clean movement from both runners. Very impressive time from Tass. Missing a few tricks here and there, and sloppy flower room, but well done. Natalier as well. A lot of good movement, a lot of great work, as I said before. You know, she's come a long way recently, but couple of mistakes in some of the major skip sections of the game. But overall, still a very strong run for her. Apologies that I can't actually switch the audio to Natalier's, but I will keep Tass's credit audio up for the time being. Also, if you're interested in this game, if you enjoyed watching it, I encourage you to buy it if you have it, play through it. It's an incredibly fun casual playthrough. Even having seen it played here, you know, it's a 4 hour or so casual playthrough. It's super fun, super enjoyable, super emotional. Highly recommend it if you're interested in speedrunning it, as I recommend as well. Like I said, it's a relatively calm speedrun, but still, as you've seen, you know, lots of tricks, lots of challenging parts to it. Still definitely a very competitive space. We also just have a great community. Come say hi. We'll be nice. We won't be like Mean Bully Bird. Link to our Discord is on the speedrun.com page for GRIS. Hey, Tass.
How's it going, JB?
Pretty good. Nice race. Congrats on the win.
Thanks. It was a little rusty, but
Yeah, definitely some mistakes. Your flower room was interesting.
let's not talk about that. Have you not ever mashed too fast and undercut it the flower before? Because I've done that a bunch of times.
I'm just too good for that. I don't know about
Heyo.
you, but hey, Nat.
So, happy to hit no cycle though. That was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that was Pog. Great to see. Great race overall. Like I said, you know, good clean movement from both of you. Some interesting mistakes. Some, you know, unfortunate slip ups on both sides. But overall, like I said, great runs. Great to see both of you with, you know, solid times.
GG, Nat.
Yeah, thanks. You did really good. Good job, buddy.
You too. So I don't know. I gotta practice a little bit and play the game more than once in the past month, probably.
Yeah, Skylar's coming for you.
I got to worry about Nixith first. So.
Oh yeah, he's gotten really good as well, actually. My run against Nixith being ridiculously good.
I think you
I
got the
believe,
exact same time that I just got.
Yeah, I think I did. So you'd better pick it up.
Yeah, I can't count on No Cycle to bail me out every run.
So like I said, great runs. Like I said before, if you enjoyed the speed run, come check out our Discord, check out the community. We're great, nice people, I promise. If you enjoyed the game, check it out. Also hope you come out for the rest of the tournament. this, I believe, was the final quarterfinals matchup. The semifinals matchup will be coming at some point in the future, but with Thanksgiving here in the US this week and other holiday plans and stuff, don't have all those scheduled yet, but they'll be coming up. They'll be super exciting. I hope you come out for those. Any last words from you guys?
No.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Definitely give this game a try, even as a casual playthrough. It's by good people, good story, universal empathy, love each other. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking forward
absolutely.
to some great semifinal matches now.
Great
coming
match
up,
here
so.
from Tasselfoot and Natalier. Check them out. I've been JB Storm. Have a good rest of y'all's day.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.